And all of a sudden, I didn't have to sell my book because Joey was like, I read this when I was 12, and like just lighting up and telling the story of what it meant to her and what it meant to her and her sisters and her friends. And and it was kind of amazing to see somebody with that kind of like star power talking about the book and like, and telling Netflix why it needed to happen.
Hi Scott, how you doing?
Hey, good. Nice to meet you, Eli.
Nice to meet you as well. Love the movie, love the book. So you were obviously one of the first to really start out the young adult genre. So for those of us younger folks out there that kind of want to write our own young adult book or anything like that, what are some key components to creating a story for the young adult genre?
I mean, the most important thing to me is that you're writing for teenagers. Everything has to be, all the problems have to be a problem that a teenager can solve. All of the issues have to be issues that are, that teenagers focus on. Um, I mean, the thing about being that age is that the worst day of your life is really terrible. The best day of your life is really amazing. Everything like has this amplitude of highs and lows. It's the time of your first kiss and your first, your first beer, but it's also the time of like the first time you have to decide to betray a friend or not betray a friend. And it's the first significant lie that you tell, maybe is as a teenager, the first real lie that has real world consequences. So everything's big and dramatic. So to me, that makes it really fun to write in that world. Everything is naturally a big story.
I love it. And did you kind of notice a big difference in writing the novel and then writing it for the screen?
I mean, I didn't do the screen adaptation, but I obviously was involved in that process. And it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that you put on the page in a novel, there's people talking about the way they look and people talking about, and like, a lot of it has to be fairly didactic. But in the movie, the nutritional content can sort of come in sideways. You're just
Yeah.
seeing it. It's right there in front of you. You can see that the pretty people maybe look a little too pretty and a little bit weird, and that the normal people were fine the way they were. There's a lot of stuff you kind of don't have to say because it's just inherent in the image that because the whole book is about images. So
Right. And what's your kind of process been like? Obviously, as you write the book, you probably have this world inside of your head. So to see it come to life through the eyes of other people and cast members and these talented actors, what has that process been like to you and in kind of like entrusting them with your work?
yeah, you think you have this whole world in your head, but there's so many details. And I would get these questions like, well, do their clothes have zippers or do they like, and I'm like, I don't know. Like I haven't thought about all that stuff. And obviously somebody who's a hairdresser who reads this script and thinking about what their hair would be like, I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't have hair. I don't think about that stuff very often. And so there's this whole raft of people who have to come up with what does a wheelbarrow look like when it's in the smoke? How do you move stuff around when you're in New Pretty Town? There's all this depth to the production design that doesn't belong in the book, doesn't need to be in the book. And it's been fascinating to see that all unfolded, to see so many interesting people build great sets and beautiful landscapes.
Ah, I love it. What was the casting process like? Did you kind of like have images of your characters as you're writing the book, and then to see the cast, you're like, oh my gosh, like what was that sort of like for you in seeing these characters in real life?
I don't Yeah, I don't really imagine specific people in when I have when I first come up with a character, the most important thing to me is what do they want and
Mm,
what do they need and what are they willing to give up to get the thing they want. So I have that feeling like I'm almost in their head more than outside of them looking at them and watching them. So I don't have as strong an idea of what a character looks like. It's more about what it's like to be them.
yeah. obviously Joey King is one of the biggest stars of at least while I'm growing up, you know. So what was it like to really sit down with her and kind of was there any conversations or anything to discuss? Obviously, she's your lead tally. So what was that process like for you?
I mean, the first time I met her was at a big room at Netflix, and it was about pitching the idea of the movie overall. Like, no deal had been signed, and it was more about, convincing them that this is something they wanted to do. And that is a situation where I'm used to being the person who talks about my book. And, I've talked about it in bookstores, and I've talked about it in front of, semi-hostile high school, auditoriums where they necessarily didn't think that the author guy who'd come to visit was that big a deal. And so I've been in that situation all these different times. And all of a sudden, I didn't have to sell my book because Joey was like, I read this when I was 12, and like just lighting up and telling the story of what it meant to her and what it meant to her and her sisters and her friends. And and it was kind of amazing to see somebody with that kind of like star power talking about the book and like, and telling Netflix why it needed to happen.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. She's a fan. Oh, we love the fan interactions, even in like the industry, within the industry. It's awesome to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah. Was there a specific scene from the novel that you were just stoked to kind of get up and see it on the screen? What, if so, like what scene, if you want to share, or like what was that feeling like for you to like finally like see that for
Right.
yourself?
I mean, the important things to me, there were probably a couple of, one was that there had to be real distinction between the part of the book that's in the city, like in New Pretty Town, the part of the book that's in Uglyville, and the part that's in the wild. Like
Mm.
all three of those worlds had to look really different. And the city had, New Pretty Town had to look beautiful and lurid and like bubblegum injected into your eyes. But the nature, the smoke had to be just as beautiful and
Mm.
like catching that balance. And that's what I think the movie does amazingly is like when you first see that vista of the smoke, you're like, yeah, right, nature doesn't need an operation to be beautiful, it's just beautiful. So that was really important to me. The hoverboards looking good were really important to me. And that some of it's with CGI and some of it is with these actual rigs where they fly people around, which was pretty cool, rigs and tracks and things like that. So there's a lot of
Right.
physical practical effects that make it look like real physics, real weight. And the scene that was most important to me to get exactly right was when David says to Tally, um, the the things you do, the way you think makes you beautiful. And
Mm.
like so we were and I was oddly, I had gone to talk to Laverne Cox, who had just arrived on set, and I got caught on the opposite side of the lake while this while like the most important scene was being shot because the road that led back was in the shot, so I couldn't get back. And but I still had like my headset and I could pick up what was happening. So I was listening to them, and it was really great. It was kind of wonderful to watch from across the lake as this scene happened. I couldn't see anything. I could just hear, and I could hear them breathing and talking. I was like, yeah, this is awesome.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. Well, have you seen it yet? You
Yes, yes, I've
hadn't.
seen the movie. Yeah.
Okay, great, great, great,
Oh,
great.
yeah.
Now you've seen it.
Keith Blanchett outline, yes.
Yeah, I love it. I got one last question for you. Obviously, like in a movie and just having that visual, it's much easier to kind of capture an intimate scene with a kiss or whatever it may be. With your novel, right? You write with such detail and it's so great. And as a reader, you can really it comes to life like in front of you, even though it's just like words on a page. So, what for you is it like writing a kissing scene or an intimate scene? One of those biggest moments in a teenager's life.
I mean, that's what you do the job for. It's
Yeah.
like it's tough. It's like, it's like, I don't know, sports metaphor, but it's like when your team is 1 point behind and you're taking the shot. It's like you have to get it. But that's why you play the game. Like that's why you do it. It's because you're not going to get that many chances in your life to write the climax of a book, to write the intense scenes in a book, and to you spent like a year writing everything else to get there. So I love that moment. And it does feel it make you nervous and like the good thing is unlike a basketball game you can try it as many times as you want. So that's
True.
why that's why I write novels instead of doing
Uh,
anything in real time.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's so great to see your work come to life, and this movie is fantastic. So congratulations on everything, and it was a pleasure meeting you today.
Yeah, pleasure talking to you.